This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined as ever by Jonathan Wilson, and we've got Josh again this week because it's too early for Martin Lawrence. Jonathan dressed like he's about to be unveiled as a manager at a press conference this morning.
Oh, if a manager turned up in tweed, I'd be very impressed by them. Yeah, I'm going out for a very nice lunch, which is why we're starting early, and I very much appreciate everybody's efforts. So thank you very much.
Anything for you, Jonathan and Josh? Good to have you on again. Not going to be looking out the window today, though, which is a little bit disappointing. New location. A couple of people in the comments wondered why I kept looking out the window. And last week there was a guy with a leaf blower. It's very exciting. It's more exciting than what we're talking about. He was doing a terrible job as well. The leaves were going just everywhere, nowhere in particular. So he caught my attention a couple of times.
And they're so noisy, leaf blowers, aren't they? I really hate leaf blowers.
Yeah. So no window today.
Just use a brush.
We probably could do a whole podcast on this, but we will do a podcast on the Premier League weekend. But we're going to start with a brief Champions League roundup. Now, we did a Twitter Spaces last night, Jonathan. I don't know whether you know, the first time we've delved into there. So thanks to everyone that tuned in to the Twitter Spaces after the Champions League game, and for Josh for controlling it. Because
what's a Twitter Space?
It's like a mini podcast just talking about the Champions League last night. So he talked about the Man City game, which was a very, very enjoyable game, really, really interesting. I thought we got Champions League team of the week, haven't we, Josh?
Unfortunately, there's no Manchester City players. Although it was
are you actually joking, man?
No, I'm not. It was a high-class technical performance, but obviously there are a lot of other games that obviously we weren't paying attention to, and there's a lot of good ratings from them as well. So I'll just run through the team. In goal, we've got Josep Martinez, who he only had 24 hours to prepare for the game after Peter Glashy tested positive for COVID. But his European debut went pretty well for RB Leipzig. And then moving into defence, we've got Reece James, who just can't stop scoring. In centre-back, we have Salzburg's Maximilian Volber and Sporting's Gonzalo Inacio. And then at left-back, we have Lille's Reinildo. Into midfield, we've got Rodrigo for Real Madrid, who's a bit of an odd player who loves the Champions League. He's got 12 goals and assists in 20 appearances, and he's averaging one every 72 minutes in the competition. Midfield partnership is not Bernardo Silva, unfortunately, but it was
an outrageous decision from WhoScored's algorithm.
He does get a mention later on in our Premier League form rankings, but just for this one, it's RB Leipzig midfielders Christopher Nkunku, who's got 7 goals in 5 appearances in the Champions League this season. PSG, his former club, have only got 9 as a team, so maybe they let him go a bit too hastily. And he's joined by Emil Forsberg. And then at left midfield, we've got Ivan Perisic. And then the 2 up front is Edin Dzeko, who brought up 50 goals in European competition last season. Really good striker, Edin Dzeko, I think. A bit underrated in his career. And he's joined up front by young boys as Jordan Sibacheu. So not the big names, but I guess it's always nice for the players that you don't really hear about get a mention.
Bernardo Silva, if he's watching this, he's going to be absolutely outraged because I thought he was absolutely stupendous last night. But I think you make a valid point on Edin Dzeko. I think he's very, very underrated. Kind of flies under the radar even for the fact that they won the league. His goal was actually really, really important, but because of the nature of Aguero's goal, Dzeko's header just before never gets talked about. But obviously that was just as important because it set them on their way. Yeah. Always good to watch the Champions League. Really, really enjoyable evening. Let's look at the Premier League weekend then. A team that don't feature much actually in our big previews. It's Arsenal against Newcastle. It's the Joe Willock derby because I couldn't think of anyone, and Jonathan had to inform me about. Did I say Jonathan Willock?
You said Joe. You got it right.
Did I say Joe Willock? Okay, fine. I'll carry on. Yeah, the Joe Willock derby. Not many players that have played for Arsenal and Newcastle, so I had to go with the basic one.
Yeah. Malcolm McDonald, the other one who immediately leapt out to me. I'm sure there are others, but they're the 2.
I'm telling you, as I said to you earlier, I lay awake thinking about it last night, and there's not many at all. Arsenal come and stuck, Jonathan, against Liverpool. A little bit of naivety. I thought a little bit of naivety from Arteta, actually, to line up the same way as he has in previous games against Liverpool, playing those 2 strikers. I think maybe he should have dropped an extra midfielder in.
I don't know. It's always difficult, isn't it? Because if he had gone more defensive and they'd been beaten as comfortably as they were, we'd have said, he should have stuck to what was working. So I think it's always difficult to say with hindsight. But yeah, yeah, you look back at those first 3 games of the season when, I mean, Brentford, okay, but then got battered by Chelsea, got battered by Manchester City. And I think we see where Arsenal's level is. They're nowhere near as good as that top 3 or 4. But they are pretty good in that sort of mid-table range. And I think this was sort of just a reminder to everybody not to get carried away. That although they had been on a 10-game unbeaten run, which they've won 8. When they come up against the very best opposition, there's still quite a gulf there.
Would you be worried, Josh? Well, you probably won't be worried because you're not an Arsenal fan, but the fragility creeps back in now for Arsenal. They could now go on a little bit of a sticky run based on the fact that they've just been humbled at Anfield, or would you just think it's just a one-off?
I think it's important for Arsenal not to get too down on the result. I think if they're being realistic, that, as Jonathan said, Liverpool, City and Chelsea, they're just not in the same conversation for Arsenal. Those are those top 3 positions are pretty much done, really. It just depends on what order. So as long as Arsenal accept that 4th is really the best they can achieve, and probably what the best they can achieve for like a few more seasons. Because if you're looking at Bukayo Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe as your inspirations, they're only 20 and 21. And I guess unless they're generational talents, no top well-run club is banking on players of such inexperience. If you look at just Liverpool, they had Salah, who's 29, Mane 29, Fabinho 28, Van Dijk 30, Alisson's 29, and Matip's 30. They've got world-class experienced players all over the pitch. And that's the difficulty for clubs like Arsenal and other similar clubs, is unless they have really good recruitment, and that takes years and years to even get close to that position. So yeah, they shouldn't be too down on it, I don't think. They just have to focus on what their realistic their targets are, I think, this season.
Yeah, still heading in the right direction. I think they're still going to be contenders for 4th, which I think they would have taken.
Andy Cole, Mathieu Debuchy, George Easton.
Oh, you've either been Googling or you've been thinking.
Well, Andy Cole's a bit of a cheat, isn't he? Did Andy Cole even play for Arsenal? He was definitely on their books.
He was there.
Yeah, he was there before he went to Bristol City, and then he went to Bristol City to Newcastle. But Debuchy and George Easton, definitely.
Very, very well done. I'm still absolutely buzzing that I knew that Ivan Toney had played for Newcastle last week, and you didn't, Jonathan.
No, I didn't. So passed me by.
And then they mentioned it on Match of the Day as well.
They did. It was like drag it to me heart.
Yes, come on, football pundit. This is what I'm here for. Newcastle, then, Jonathan. You watched Match of the Day. I don't know whether you watched the whole game of Newcastle. I would describe it as chaos. Under Eddie Howe, it was a good chaos because they looked very, very dangerous going forward, but still defensively all over the place, which Eddie Howe, he can't really take the blame for that. But it was an exciting game. But they looked a lot more interesting to watch, didn't they? Yeah,
they did. I mean, I have to say I'm slightly puzzled by the line of attack on Steve Bruce. He was over defensive as a coach because that was true at times, but it wasn't true all the time. And certainly through his career, there have been periods of defensiveness, but also periods when I was at Sunderland, when every game was sort of 4-1 or 5-2, one way or the other. But yeah, I think they had become a miserable watch this season, quite apart from everything else. And that 3-3 was absolutely not a miserable watch. So they did look more coherent and cohesive going forward. But that worry we had about them defensively, well, none of those worries have gone away, that they hadn't kept a clean sheet all season before Eddie Howe took over. Eddie Howe's Bournemouth conceded 65 goals a season on average over his 5 years in the Premier League. And if you're letting in 3 at home to Brentford, well, 65 goals a season looks like it's on again. So, yeah, good going forward, disappointing at the back. And that is really the pattern I think we probably expected.
Yeah, they got this new player as well, Josh, I've never seen before, this £40 million player, Joe Linton. Very lively all of a sudden when now Steve Bruce has departed and Eddie Howe's come in completely like a new signing.
I guess that was the big surprise for Newcastle supporters that it wasn't Callum Wilson or Alan St-Maximin, but it was Joe Linton that performed the best in Howe's game. He was actually the WhoScored man of the match in the draw. Again, look, there's a lot to be said for a striker that scored, I think it's 7 goals in 80 league games for someone that cost £40 million. But Howe seems to have identified him as a key man early on. I think he was in the pre-match press conference to the Brentford game. He sort of hinted that Steve Bruce had been playing him out of position. And we looked at where he had played Joe Linton, and it was always on the wide left of midfield in a 5-4-1 formation. And against Brentford, Howe put him straight up on the wide right in a 3-4-3. So there was a change there immediately. And people expect footballers to work hard, but quite a lot of them don't. And Joe Linton does provide that. Newcastle signed him from a Hoffenheim team that was coached by Julian Nagelsmann. So he is schooled in pressing, and Howe seems to have identified him as someone that can lead Newcastle's press. It was interesting that against Brentford, he obviously scored the goal, but he had 71 touches of the ball. He was everywhere on the pitch, and that's the most he's ever touched the ball in a Premier League game. So if in the short term, at least, maybe he seems that he's going to be a big player for Eddie Howe, which might have surprised a few heading into that first game.
Yeah, Joe Linton Mark II, Jonathan, although he did go back to Joe Linton Mark I when he fell over at the end of the game, when he looked like he might score the winner, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I've always sort of felt a bit sorry for him at Newcastle. I know he scored in his debut, didn't he? But it pretty quickly went wrong. But he was sort of missold. There's this sort of idea, he's this £40 million striker. Well, he was never really a striker, either at Rapid Vienna or at Hoffenheim. I look back positioning because I wasn't sort of aware really that he played on the right before, but he did spend most of one season at Hoffenheim playing on the right. But before that, he either played off a forward as a sort of false nine or off the left. So I think there's this sort of great burden of expectation placed on him when he arrived that he was going to be this great goal scorer, which was never really what he was all about, that he needed to play alongside a goal scorer or with players going beyond him. I hope for his sake that this is the start of a turnaround, because it just sort of felt like one of those careers that was going to end up being wasted through no real fault of his own, that he'd been forced into circumstances where people had expectations of him which weren't valid expectations, and then he became a symbol for the failures of the Ashley regime in terms of recruitment, in terms of players being foisted on managers that they perhaps didn't want. Hopefully from his point of view that is the start of something, because I think what we saw in Germany and Austria, there is a player there. Just got to find it again.
Just on Newcastle, on the goals they conceded, I watched it back in the build up to this podcast, and I was watching the goals that they conceded.
That's when the build up to the podcast was, Josh. It's 8:30 in the morning. When was the build up to the podcast?
At the start of the week, it started for me.
Okay.
But yeah, one was a goalkeeping error and one was a massive deflection. And when I was watching it, I thought, well, on another day, those things don't happen. But unfortunately, with Newcastle, they do. I look back across the last 3 seasons, and Newcastle have made the most errors leading to an opposition goal with 19, and they're also second for own goals of 6. So Eddie Howe, that's not a one-off really. So Eddie Howe has to sort that out quickly if they want to beat the drop.
I like the thought of people building up to going to events or going to a football match. Josh builds up to be on the podcast early on in the week. He gets himself set, gets himself ready.
Got to get mentally prepared.
Very, very professional. Very, very professional. Everything that I am not. Bet build me then, Josh.
This one, we've got a 4-leg one for the Arsenal-Newcastle game. It's the first leg is Arsenal to win. They've won their last 6 meetings with Newcastle and they haven't conceded a goal in that time. We've picked Aubameyang to score this week for Arsenal. He scored in each of his last 5 appearances against Newcastle, so loves it against the Toonami. And then we've got 2 bookings to finish it off. We've got John Joe Shelby, who's been booked in 3 of his 5 league appearances this season, and Kieran Clark, who's been booked at least 2 more times against Arsenal than any other club in his career. So that was 28-1, and BetVictor have boosted that to 40-1, which is a leading price and far beyond some of the other leading bookies.
Kieran Clark once played in midfield for Aston Villa against Arsenal and scored a double. Heady days, absolutely heady days. Predictions then, I'll start. I've gone for 2-1 to Arsenal. Jonathan?
Likewise, 2-1 Arsenal.
Based on
Josh?
Arsenal winning against Newcastle and not conceding a goal, we've gone for 1-0 Arsenal.
1-0. Yeah, I can say that. Well, actually, no. After the chaos of Eddie Howe's Newcastle last week, will he be back in the dugout? Is he back in the dugout, Eddie Howe? Has he recovered? Or has he got another game on? We'll find out.
It depends exactly when the positive test was, I think, probably.
Yeah.
And also, does it depend whether he's vaccinated or is that only a German rule? Which
I've not got to play.
We've had to learn about this week because of Bayern's nonsensical bench.
Yeah, I've absolutely no idea, Jonathan, but we will find out Saturday at lunchtime. We move on now to the Just a Minute section. Josh, how did we go with the predictions last week then?
It's getting tighter at the top. You've taken a 3-point lead down at the top of the table.
That, Jonathan, have that.
You've got 84 points, Jonathan's got 81 points, and WhoScored have got 80. So there's only 4 points between all of us now.
I had a good Super Sunday. I got them both. I think we all got Tottenham leads, to be fair, but I got Man City. A late goal for Man City swung it in my favour and got me the 3 points.
I think we all predicted Tottenham to beat Leeds 2-1, and Jonathan and WhoScored got the 3-0 Man City, which helped.
I thought I was the only one that got the 3-0 Man City.
I didn't get the 3-0 City.
I think I was the only one.
Jonathan had
I went
2-0.
Yeah.
So that late goal was decisive, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the top of the league. Heady days. Jonathan says he doesn't care, but when he's top, I remember him giving it the big one. But when he's not top, he suddenly doesn't care, which is very, very interesting.
I'm merely pointing out that we're on we're a third of the way through the season. There's a long way to go. And if that late City goal hadn't gone in, I'd have been clear at the top. Would that have meant anything? Yes, actually it would. Yes.
Absolutely. Should say, as the Edge of the Box podcast is a year old today. I don't know whether you knew that, Jonathan.
I didn't. What a touching moment.
Maybe
I'll raise a glass at lunchtime. Yeah.
What a milestone. Who can believe that we've been going for one whole year, that people have let us continue to do it. First game then, Jonathan, in just a minute, is the big one. It's Crystal Palace against Aston Villa, and it's the Gareth Southgate derby for you.
Palace unbeaten in 7 in the league, but 5 of those have been draws. Of those draws, though, in 4 of them, they had the better XG. So I think there is a sense they are playing really well at the moment and perhaps aren't quite getting the results they deserve. If you look at an expected points table, I think they'd be 6th. Villa will be 15th by expected points. They have been playing as badly as results suggest. The win against Brighton, first game of Steven Gerrard, suggests perhaps that a corner has been turned. And despite the sort of difference in perception of how the two teams are playing, Villa are only 3 points behind Palace. I think what was interesting about Gerrard's first game was that return to the 4-3-3 that he'd used at Rangers, a very narrow front three with Watkins wide. And it meant Buendia could play on the right then. That seemed to work. I think it works with Target and Cash getting forward. So we'll see how that works out. Last season, Palace won this game 3-2. I think it'd be a lot tighter and a lot cagier this time. I'm going to say 1-1.
Snap. I've gone for 1-1 as well, although I am going, and if ever I'm going to a Villa away game, you can almost certainly bet that they will get beaten. What's WhoScored prediction?
We've gone for 2-2.
2-2. Yeah. Goals. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Josh, your turn. It's the Ricky Lambert derby. It's Liverpool v Southampton.
There's a lot of players in this derby, isn't there?
Could have been anyone.
Van Dijk. Changes were made by Liverpool midweek for a game that meant nothing for Jurgen Klopp's team, but he still fielded a stronger team than expected, with the likes of Thiago, Salah, Mane and Matip all risked. Diogo Jota, Jordan Henderson, Milner and Robertson were all fit to make the bench against Porto, signalling they'll all return to the starting 11 here. But there's still no Roberto Firmino, Harvey Elliott or Curtis Jones. Southampton were made to rue missed chances against Norwich last weekend, particularly in the first half, where they had 12 shots to Norwich's 1. Not really expecting many changes at all from them this weekend. But Nathan Redmond should be back after the birth of his child, but Stuart Armstrong, Moussa Djenepo and Jack Stevens are all expected to miss out. Southampton haven't won a Premier League game at Anfield since 2013, and it's difficult to see that changing here, and we're backing a Liverpool 2-0 win.
3-0 for me. Jonathan?
3-0 for Liverpool, yeah.
3-0.
Have we gone the same for all 3 so far?
Yeah, we're matchy all the way through so far. Not great. I don't know, actually now, that's good. Who cares? Keep that. Absolutely get that up, although WhoScored are going to rocket to the top of the league now if we keep doing the same. Now, I didn't have someone for this derby match, but I literally just popped into my head. The Matt Jarvis derby is Norwich against Wolves, Jonathan.
Oh, very good. I think there's been a sort of sense that they were pretty much doomed after about a month of the season, that it felt like we were following the same old pattern. But they did have a very tough start to the season in terms of fixtures. And there has been a clear improvement. Obviously, the change of manager, Dean Smith coming in, is responsible for the second of their 2 wins. But they have won the last 2 in a row. They've scored 5 goals in the last 3 games, having only scored 2 in the first 9. So from an admittedly low bar, there are definite signs of progress. They're off the bottom now, which may help psychologically. Wolves playing really well at the moment, only 1 defeat in the last 7. They've won 5 of those. If you look at the expected points table, they'd be 7th in the table. That maybe they didn't get the results their performance deserved in the early weeks of the season. Hwang and Jimenez have both scored 3 goals in that 7-game run, looking like a proper partnership. So I suspect, although Norwich are playing better, Wolves probably are just better, and defensively I think Wolves are very good. So I'm going to go for Wolves to win 1-0.
I've gone for 1-1. Dean Smith to continue his unbeaten start for Norwich. Josh, WhoScored?
Wolves to win 2-1.
Wolves to win 2-1. Differential. This is what we want. This is what we're here for. Right, next game for you, Josh, and this is a very cheap one. It's the Ben White derby. It's Brighton against Leeds, and nothing else leaping out at me. Off you go.
This match is probably the hardest to predict in terms of formation and personnel. Both Graham Potter and Marcelo Bielsa love changing up, and that will probably be the case here. After Haps overachieving at the start of the season, Brighton are now struggling for wins. The Seagulls are now winless in 8 games, but they are still in the top half of the table. Changes, as they always are for Brighton, will likely be made with Joel Veltman, Solly March and Neil Maupay pushing for starts. It's unclear at the time of recording whether Rodrigo and Rafinha will return for Leeds this weekend. Both missed the 2-1 defeat to Tottenham last time out. With Luke Ayling and Patrick Bamford still sidelined, Leeds are really struggling for numbers at the moment. Leeds actually took the lead against Tottenham but ended up losing. They've still only won twice in the league this season, and those victories came against strugglers Norwich and Watford. There hasn't actually been a draw in any of the last 11 matches between the two sides, but in a game that we're struggling to make sense of, we're going to go for a 1-1 draw.
1-1. Jonathan?
2-1 to Brighton.
No, I've gone 2-1 to Leeds.
Ooh,
That's good. I thought Leeds were very good in the first half against Spurs last week. I thought they were really, really impressive. I think they're gonna have to come good at some point. And I watched Brighton at Villa Park last night. It wasn't last night. It was at the weekend. Last weekend. Boring. Very slow. Lots of passing. Not really going anywhere. So yeah, I've gone for Brighton 1, Leeds 2. Jonathan, your next game is Brentford against Everton, and I have not got a derby for this one. Not a clue.
No, nothing springs immediately to mind.
Nothing.
Brentford, having had a really good start, haven't won the last 5. There's maybe just a touch of concern there. Having said that, in 3 of those 5 games, they were the better team, looking at the XG models and just looking at the game with your eyes. Particularly against Chelsea, they played really well. That maybe suggests that they lack a bit of finishing quality. That's the thing that's letting them down, and that's not helped by the fact they've got as many as 8 players possibly out. And particularly a club like Brentford, I think when you get that many injuries, it's always going to undermine you. They're still 5 points off a drop, so they shouldn't be that concerned yet. And they're 2 behind Everton, who also have huge injury problems. Haven't won in 6. But no Calvert-Lewin, no Doucouré, no Mina, no Davis, no Gomez, no Gray, Holgate and Richarlison both suspended. So a lot of people missing for them. 2 points from the last 6 for them. And so I think this will be pretty tight. And I'm going to go 1-1.
Had I known that Everton had that entire team missing, I might have gone different. I've gone 0-0. I think I'm only the only person that's ever predicted a 0-0 before, and it didn't come off. There was loads of goals in that game, so hopefully this time I'll get it right. What have WhoScored gone for, Josh?
We've gone for Brentford to capitalise on Everton's injury crisis and 2-1 to Brentford.
Good research. Makes sense to do a little bit of research, doesn't it? Josh, your final preview is Burnley against Tottenham. It's the Kieran Trippier derby.
Burnley have only lost one of their last 7 Premier League matches and are slowly but surely getting closer to safety. The problem is they've only won once in that time, drawing too many of them. Surprisingly, goals haven't been the problem, but it's been keeping them out. They've scored more goals than Arsenal, Tottenham and Manchester United since the start of October, but they've only kept 1 clean sheet all season, and that was against Norwich. Tottenham were actually booed off at half-time against Leeds last weekend, but Antonio Conte's side turned it around for his first league win in charge. Tottenham fans got their first taste of Conte's sideline theatrics, and it certainly went down well come the full-time whistle. All is pretty good on the injury front for them, other than Christian Romero, whose injury is now worse than first thought. He looks like he's going to miss a pretty chunky spell. Tottenham players don't yet have the required fitness levels to carry out Conte's style of play. And as we saw at the start of his Chelsea reign, we're expecting a few hiccups. We're actually going to go for a 1-1 draw here.
I've gone Burnley 1, Spurs 2. Jonathan?
Burnley 1, Spurs 2.
Football connoisseur's choice there for that prediction. Final game for you, Jonathan, is Leicester against Watford. I'm going to have to say Claudio Ranieri derby because I've not thought of anything.
I mean, Leicester's season seems to just be sort of drifting along, going nowhere. That I guess the hope for them is that they're just doing the season the other way around, how they've done the last 2 seasons, and that they're going to have a brilliant end of the season rather than the brilliant beginning they have had. Haven't won the last 3. They've only won twice at home all season, which is obviously a concern. I think it shows how they're more effective playing on the break. Injuries really, I think, are the issue there. Fofana and Tielemans particularly, but Pereira and Justin are also out. But Tielemans is so important for creativity from the back of midfield that they do lack a lot when he's not there, both in terms of breaking forward and scoring goals and the passes he can deliver to Vardy or Iheanacho or Patson Daka. Watford are only 2 points behind Leicester, which I think would not have been how we'd have seen this from the start of the season. Very hard to work out what's going on at Watford. Some brilliant wins, some pretty drab games. I think there is a sense somewhere in there of them tightening up under Ranieri, but I still think that Watford probably don't have enough, and so I'm going for Leicester to win 1-0.
I've gone for 2-2. Josh, who scored?
We've gone for Leicester to win 2-1, and we've actually got a boost for this game from BetVictor. I'm not sure if you remember last weekend we correctly tipped Rudiger to score.
Good fantasy football news that was, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Excellent fantasy football.
No, when that goal went in, honestly, my heart lifted for you.
Oh, good, lovely to hear. Heartwarming tale.
So in this game, we've looked back, and Jamie Vardy's actually scored a penalty in 4 of the last 5 meetings with Watford at the King Power Stadium. So we've got a boost for him to score a penalty, and that's been boosted to 11-2, which is the best price you'll find around.
Whilst we're bragging, then, how did we get on with our Saturday 3 p.m. treble last week? I think I can brag. I'm not sure if anyone else can.
Yeah, it was just you, wasn't it, that your tip came in?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Mine was right in everything apart from not actually happening.
What was yours?
I went for Newcastle to win, both teams to score, which was 9-2, I think. It was a hefty price. And if, as Josh said earlier, 2 of the Brentford goals were pretty fortuitous. So Newcastle the better side and lots of goals. I haven't got. That's not me that's at fault there.
Yeah, that's a looker. And you, Bob, you went for Southampton to beat Norwich, didn't you? Who scored leg?
Yeah, and they should have done really in the first half. As I said, they had 12 shots and Norwich's won in the first half, and then just didn't take their chances.
Dean Smith, you underestimate the Dean Smith and Billy Gilmore link up, didn't you, Jack? You know what? I liked that. Well, I didn't like that treble at all. Actually, I didn't like one leg of the treble, so I did my own. So I had Norwich to beat Southampton instead of Southampton to beat Norwich, which came in. My Ollie Watkins to score came in, and then Newcastle didn't win. So that ruined my treble. So yeah, I went against us a little bit because I fancied Norwich to beat Southampton, and obviously they did. What's our treble this week then?
Yep. So you stuck with them for the goal scorer bet. You've tipped Benteke to score against Villa. His old club, obviously. Yeah. He scored 5 in his last 5 starts. We've gone for Raul Jimenez to score against Norwich. Did so home and away last time out in the Premier League. And Jonathan, you've gone for Liverpool to win at to be leading at half-time and full-time, which seems a pretty solid bet, doesn't it?
Well, all 7 of our league wins this season have been ahead of half-time, so I think that does seem to make sense. Yeah, just a way of getting a bit more value out of a Liverpool
savvy move.
Yeah, and so that was 13-1. BetVictor have boosted that to 16-1, and again, that is the best price. All of our tips this weekend are best price around at the time of recording.
I like that. I thought Benteke hadn't ever scored against Villa, but then I realised he did score last season against us at Selhurst Park. So good omen. Well, not bad omens from there, but good omens if you like that bet. Let's look ahead now to Manchester City against West Ham. João Cancelo, we talked about him a little bit on the Twitter Spaces last night, but Jonathan, that pass last week, it's Paul Merson at Villa-esque outside of the boot. It really was. Unbelievable pass. And a very good finish from Sterling, which has gone under the radar a little bit. But Cancelo from fullback. I mean, Pep just gets the best out of fullbacks, doesn't he?
There's this odd talk around Trent Alexander-Arnold that, he's so good on the ball, maybe he should play midfield. Well, one of the reasons he's good on the ball is because fullbacks get a lot of the ball and they get a lot of crossing opportunities. And so you want your best passers at fullback. And I think Cancelo, although he's quite different in how he plays to Alexander-Arnold, is another example of that. And I remember Jack Charlton after the 94 World Cup saying that fullback had become tactically the most interesting and most important position on the pitch. And I think we can say, 27 years on, that's still true. There's so many different varieties of fullbacks. It feels it's a position that we're still exploring the possibilities of what a fullback can do. And Cancelo, the way he comes inside, which is obviously to do with the fact he's so comfortable on either foot. But it just means City have they can use him to become sort of almost like an old-fashioned wing half. So if you imagine sort of the base defensive shape for all teams now, when the ball's at the other end of the pitch, is a back 3 and then 2 holding midfielders in front of them. If you have your fullbacks can tuck into that position, it means one of your actual midfielders can go forward, which gives you an extra angle of attack, or he can go forward himself. There's that extraordinary statistic, I don't know if it's still true, but a couple of weeks it was true, that Cancelo had more touches in the opposition final third than Jack Grealish this season. He had played slightly more minutes, I think, but still, he's a fullback. Grealish obviously is playing as a forward. So he's hugely important to City going forward. And it's not just because he's got great energy to get forward. And it's not just because his positional sense is so good. It's because, as you say, he's a phenomenal passer of the ball.
I should have said, by the way, this is the Steve Lomas derby at the Etihad. Man City v West Ham. The amazing thing about Cancelo, Josh, is that everyone talks about, we're talking about Reece James and Trent a lot, who are playing right back. Cancelo's doing it from the wrong side, which I think makes it a little bit more special.
He falls into that category of players that have a tough first season under Guardiola and then get written off a little bit and then just come good. I think it's quite true of a lot of the Manchester City signings that he's made. And just as a wider point, as you say, how important fullbacks have become. In our top 20 WhoScored rated players this season, Alexander-Arnold, Ben Chilwell, Reece James, João Cancelo, and even Marcos Alonso, they're all in there. So
Marcos Alonso is in there.
He started the season really well, if you remember, when Ben Chilwell had like a Euro hangover of not playing. But yeah, Marcos Alonso, I think he started their first 6 league games. So yeah, just all of those fullbacks are in the top 20, and I guess that just shows how important they are becoming and have become, sort of thing.
Yeah, really interesting, the development of fullbacks, as we've already touched on. Now, West Ham, Jonathan, they lost last week, obviously. I mean, Wolves has been a tough place to play, but it's a bit of a surprise probably that they have lost, because they've been so good. The perception is that they need to do a little bit of business in January. They're probably a little bit short. It says here that Tarkowski, Lingard, and a backup striker. But what would you say that West Ham need to sustain a top 4 challenge?
I'd say exactly that. I think they're very reliant on Mikel Antonio. He's been absolutely brilliant. But when he was suspended earlier in the season, you saw their level dropped a bit. I think you can't be relying on one single forward. So yeah, they probably need backup to him. I suspect that they're going to suffer a bit, and maybe you saw this even at Wolves, that Ogbonna, I think, he got injured in that win over Liverpool and is out. I think for certainly most of the season, if not all the season, because of his it's a knee cruciate problem. I think he's 33 now, and I think He's a really good player, but he's also kind of, I think, has a great sort of leadership role. I think he's got that sort of aura of authority. And, although Dawson's come in and is fine, he's just not quite at the same level. So maybe they need to improve at centre-back. And then you saw how good Lingard was for them last season. He gave them something a bit extra from midfield. And the midfield with Rice and Souček is very, very good. It's not that they're short there, but Lingard last season did make them better. He works in that system. So yeah, those are the. I mean, Lingard again. It's an example of Manchester United just sort of bizarre choices from the board that they could have sold them for 25 million, 20 million in the summer. Take the money, move on. Could even have maybe done some sort of deal with Declan Rice, but no, they hold on to him, and there's no place for him in that side, and there's never going to be a place for him. Where does he fit in that team? The way that United play, even before Ronaldo got there's only one really creative central midfielder. Possibly Pogba could fit in there as well, but is he going to displant Bruno Fernandes? No, of course he's not. And then you got Donny van der Beek, who plays in that role, who probably is ahead of him in the pecking order. So it just seemed very odd to me. Why would you not sell him when there's a club willing to pay reasonable money for him in the present market where clubs don't have a lot of money, which I presume is one of the reason why people like Juan Mata were given longer contracts, because they thought rather than letting him go for free, you'd try and get some money in the future. But Lingard was money there and then, and he was a player they didn't need and were never going to need. So those 3 positions: Lingard because we know he works there, a centre back because I think they look short without Ogbonna, and a centre forward because I think you can't rely on Mikel Antonio all season.
I think things are working out quite nicely for West Ham because they haven't lost any momentum from the summer. They're 4th, and like if you assess the other candidates for that 4th position, they're right in there. So yeah, they've not lost any momentum, and players like Lingard and Tarkowski, they're out of contract at the end of this season. So to carry on that momentum and potentially pick up 2 really good players for sort of like cut price deals, I think that could give them that extra momentum push in the second half of the season.
I thought Tarkowski would be a cert for Newcastle. I could be wrong.
That's the only problem West Ham might have now, is that Newcastle could move the goalposts.
Lingard as well, actually. You wouldn't bet against him turning up at St James's Park either.
Yeah, I mean, the thing they do have, though, is that they can say, look, we're in the Europa League, so come and join our Europa League challenge, and look where we are on the table. Next season, we'll definitely be in the Premier League, and we might be in the Champions League. We'll probably be in the Europa League. Newcastle might be in the Championship. Mm-hmm. So Newcastle could probably almost certainly offer more money, but if you're a player, do you take that gamble for an extra 20, 30, 40% a week? Or do you think, no, I'll take the European football?
got the London factor as well, haven't they? I don't know whether is that a thing now.
What are you saying about the Northeast? Are you attacking the Northeast?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, you've come from the Northeast to London, Jonathan. The bright lights.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I'd been led to believe the streets are paved with gold, but that seems to be a lie that they spin us.
Paved with something. I'm not sure it's gold.
I mean, there is a functional public transport network which sets it above the Northeast. So I'll give it that.
It helps, always helps. But it used to be a thing when I was younger. Like if Villa were trying to sign someone, and in a London team, they're going to go to London. Not going to come to Birmingham. Since then, now we've got the Bullring, Grand Central. Birmingham was the place to be.
Roy Keane was. Who was that player who I can't remember who it was who ended up joining Fulham instead of joining Sunderland under Roy Keane, and he says because his wife wanted to go shopping.
I can't remember.
So was it Chris Baird? Is that possible? Is that true? Let me just Google Chris Baird and see if his wife. See if he did join Fulham. And
you're the one who's going out, Jonathan. If we've got time for this, you feel for it.
Yeah, it was Chris Baird.
Wow.
Chris Baird's wife's got a lot to answer for, if Roy Keane's so believed. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, nice little segment. Always good to find out information like that. Rodri versus Rice, both on really, really good form. But who would you rather have? I presume WhoScored to get involved here with some kind of statage, Josh.
Yeah, well, Rice is actually the top-rated player of the two, but I just think from a personal perspective, I think I'd rather Rice as well. I just like his mobility more, and I think he's definitely transformed his game a little bit, where he's offering more going forward. I guess that's never going to be asked of Rodri to that extent, because his role is to make others play better. But yeah, Rodri's come on a lot as well, hasn't he? I remember it seems a long time ago now where City fans used to loathe him being in the team over Fernandinho, but now it's easy to forget that Fernandinho is even still there. I guess that what didn't help Rodri to start with was that he joined the same summer Vincent Kompany left, and I guess it's no surprise that he kicked on when Ruben Diaz arrived 12 months later. I guess there's a greater margin for error now with their defence looking so solid. But yeah, personally, I would side with Rice.
I think it depends on formation. I think if I was playing a 4-3-3 and you've got the one sitter, I think I'd rather have Rodri. If you've got a pairing, I think I'd rather have Declan Rice. Jonathan?
I quite like the two of them to play together at the back of the midfield.
Well, I think
Rice gives that solidity. He probably gives you more goal threat than Rodri. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to tell because obviously they're playing in very different teams. But my suspicion would be that Rodri's sort of tactical and positional sense is slightly better. So I don't know. I think it's a very, very difficult question to answer. But they're both having great seasons.
What Rodri was missing at the start of his game was, I think people criticised him for not having the same nose for danger as Fernandinho. But last night on commentary, Martin Keown actually said that, I think it was when Rodri forced Mbappe to overrun the ball, he just smells danger so well. And I think that was something that he's learned since he first arrived, which is a bit surprising, I guess, because he came from Atletico under Diego Simeone. But yeah, Rodri's actually one of 3 Manchester City players in our Premier League player form rankings, along with Bernardo Silva. So there's your mention for him.
Here he is.
And Cancelo. And just on this week's giveaway, Cancelo is our pick to have shots from outside the box. So just to run through that again. So we've teamed up with podcast sponsors BetVictor, and each week we select one player who we think will have a shot from outside the box. And each time they do, BetVictor have agreed to give away 5 £10 bet bonuses. Last week we went for Ben Rama. He sadly didn't have one against Wolves, but we've gone for Cancelo this time against West Ham. He's had 12 shots from outside the box in his last 4 appearances. So all you need to do to be eligible is to be 18 and over. Comment Cancelo in the description of this YouTube page or retweet the specific posts on Sunday on Twitter.
Good luck to everyone who enters. That's probably the easiest competition that you will ever have to enter, because you're literally told what to write. All you have to do is type a footballer's name in the comments and you could win something. So yeah, I don't know why more people aren't getting involved in that. I was going to say Declan Rice would be better in the dressing room as well.
Yeah.
The dressing room factor. Yeah, you always got to take that into consideration when you're choosing who you'd rather have in your team. Predictions then. Jonathan, we'll come to you first.
2-1 City.
Same here. Josh, who scored?
We have gone for 3-1 to Man City.
3-1 to Manchester City, so a full house of Manchester City victories. Before we move on to Chelsea against Manchester United, let's talk to Sam Boswell from BetVictor, have a look at the game and have a look at the next Manchester United manager odds. Welcome, Sam. Not happy about the shirt choice, done on purpose. I mean, I suppose I haven't got much Villa stuff in the background today, but usually I've got Villa background stuff all over the place. But yeah, it's the big one is Crystal Palace against Villa at the weekend, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Chelsea against Manchester United. What's going on BetVictor for the big game then?
Yeah, the second biggest game of the weekend in our eyes, I suppose. Chelsea v United, as you'd expect. Chelsea a short price at 11-20 to get another home win. 29-10 the draw. 5-1 Man United. Now, they've not been the team that they used to be, United, but you wouldn't see too many occasions they'd be that kind of price. We've already got some boosts preset on the game that you can find already. Over 2.5 goals, 20-23, which I quite like the look of, given just how iffy United have been defensively. I know obviously Champions League was a bit of a return to defensive rearguard action working, but I still felt they gave away chances. Chelsea going to be without Chilwell, which is a real shame for them. So a little bit of a blow there. So if you fancy goals in the game, that's where to look. If you think Chelsea are going to walk all over United, we've boosted Chelsea half-time, full-time, 8-5 from 29-20. Lots of specials on the site, as you can imagine. Introducing a new market as well, I'll just give a mention. Player stats totals. We assign points to certain events in the game, so a goal's worth 25 points, an assist 15, etc. And we've priced Cristiano Ronaldo up for this game. So if you think he's going to have a stormer and he's going to score, say, over 40 points to 59 points, he's 13-8. Do check that out. It's quite an interesting, fun market and something for people to get involved in.
Lovely. Nice little new market there from BetVictor. Manchester United's next manager then, who are the punters punting on?
It's like every next manager market at the moment. I think these are getting driven more and more by very short-term social media influencers that are posting a story up and then people are diving in on prices. And I would urge everyone just to be a little bit cautious, because I think in the space of a week, we've had about 2 or 3 different odds-on shots touch on this. You know, Brendan Rodgers is now 25-1 shot. He was favourite at one stage. Zidane's 25-1. He was favourite at one stage. Current favourite is Pochettino, but he's drifted to 3-1 now. Ernesto Valverde is 5-1. Ralph Rangnick 6-1. And Michael Carrick 8-1, which on the face of it, a good start to life. If he was to get a point away at Chelsea and then a couple of wins over the period heading into Christmas, I can see United sitting on their hands a little bit and wanting time. You know, the last thing they want to do is appoint another disastrous manager. I know you quite like the look of Laurent Blanc, and we were talking about this off air. I agreed with you on that one and could see him. He's a 25-1 shot, but it is really hard out there. I genuinely on these markets usually have at least an opinion. I'm struggling to formulate one that makes any kind of sense for any of the names listed. You know, do United go left field? Let's be honest, they probably can't afford to make another error or take a risk. So it's going to have to be a big name. But the Steve Bruce factor, we've seen plenty of people suggest he's the right man for an interim job. He's 33-1. Personally, I'd make him about 333-1. I wouldn't want him anywhere near a football club if I was a fan of United. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, a tricky market. Obviously, do gamble responsibly, especially on all these kind of markets, because it is very easy to see things on social media and people jump on them. You know, do check your sources and maybe just try and take a left field punt at this stage, because who knows where Man United are going to go on this one.
Where's Roy Keane sat? That's the one everyone wants to say. Roy Keane.
He would be box office, wouldn't he? He's 66-1. But, you know, like I say, I think that's a case of would, you know, he'd last about 6 weeks, wouldn't he, before the players went on strike and didn't like the fact that he spoke to them in an aggressive manner. Could you imagine Roy Keane and Pogba in the same changing room? I don't think
they'd have a fight within 5 minutes.
I don't think he lost one. Before I go, just must mention one of the other boosts in the Crystal Palace Villa game. Christian Benteke to score 2 or more goals, 17-1, boosted from 12-1. Come on, you Eagles!
I mean, that is my Saturday 3 p.m. tip. Is Benteke to score against Villa like he did last season? So yeah, not 2 though. We can't be having that. But yeah, thanks ever so much, Sam. Dress better next week. But yeah, thank you very much, Josh. You're a Man U fan. Who do you fancy? Well, I probably know who you fancy, but who do you think they're going to get?
I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? I just can't see Pochettino leave it, even though it sounds like he's open to it. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think it will be an interim until the end of the season. But who that is, it seems like they've got a list of five names. But I don't know. I'm not quite sure who they'll end up going with. As long as it's not Carrick for the rest of the season. Nothing against Carrick, but as long as it's not as long as they don't go down the same path with Solskjaer with Carrick. But yeah, we'll just have to see. I think I'm not quite sure.
I mean, knowing the way that Manchester United operate, they'll probably beg Solskjaer to come back in 2 weeks if they don't do it. So I wouldn't bet against that happening at all. Jonathan, you're in the biz. Have you got any clue?
No, I mean, I think at the moment, Pochettino to come in at some point, probably next summer rather than January, would be my slight inclination. But I think there's still quite a few bridges to be crossed. I mean, if Carrick okay the next couple of weeks, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just keep him on as the interim. But it would be absolutely hilarious if. I mean, imagine that they end up somehow winning the Champions League or something under Michael Carrick, and he ends up getting the job, and they have to sack him sort of in 18 months' time. That would amuse me a lot.
Give him Ronaldo, player manager. He's the boss there now anyway. You might as well give it Ronaldo for a laugh and see what happens. Josh, how are Manchester United going to salvage a point against Chelsea? Because there's absolutely no way they're going to win.
I can't see it, to be honest. As much as I hate to say it, I just can't see it. I think Chelsea, as we saw against Juventus in midweek, even though that's probably the worst Juventus team I've seen in a long time, they were just so good. I mean, when Thomas Tuchel came in, I wasn't actually quite sure about him when he took over at Chelsea. I thought there were some red flags with the way PSG lost matches. But I guess if you fast forward to now and you see the suggestions that Pochettino is not happy there, then I guess it seems to be very much a PSG problem rather than a manager problem. But yeah, it's crazy to think that Tuchel's not even been there a full year yet. And he's sort of turned into the dream manager for Roman Abramovich. He's winning games, they're playing good football, they're European champions. And Chelsea's youngsters are playing a pivotal role, finally. I think they went 3-0 up against Juventus, didn't they? And all three of the goal scorers were from the academy. So it was like Cobham 3, Juventus 0. And that was with Loftus-Cheek and Mason Mount coming off the bench. I think you've got, like, in this game, they're clear favourites. And I think for the title, generally speaking, I think they're right up there with Manchester City, with possibly Liverpool just behind. And they've done it all. Lukaku's not played for the last 7 games. And even though he wasn't in amazing form, to have him back is obviously going to make them much stronger.
Yeah, and there's something funny going on at Cobham, Jonathan, because whoever plays in defence for Chelsea, they seem to become the most prolific goal scorer in world football. The defenders just pop up with goals all over the place, and every corner they have, they look like they'll score, Chelsea.
Yeah, you've bored me with your fantasy league and your football manager nonsense. Let me bore you with my table football career.
Okay, interesting. Foosball.
I mean, as they called it in Friends, yeah. But I always thought that when you got to a high level of table football, that the 2 defensive players became your key attacking threats because they were the players who had time on the ball. You know, you can knock the ball backwards with them, and you get the ball off a backboard, get it off a keeper, and so you could work a shooting opportunity easy with them. And I think there's an element to which that's happening in real football now, that the defenders are the players coming from positions that are hard to pick up, particularly the fullbacks. You know, as we said earlier when talking about Cancelo. But I also think, set plays. There's been a sort of this sort of sense, I think certainly with Guardiola teams, that set plays are almost a thing that'll just happen. You don't have to practice them. You know, if you get the structure right, you'll get set plays and you will score from them, or you take them short and you recycle it and you set up the positions that you know how to play from. But actually, set plays, if you have big defenders who are good in the air, or a big striker who's good in the air, they're a really easy way that you can invest not a huge amount of time on the training pitch and get quite big rewards in the game itself. So I think you saw that with I can't remember the precise but there was some incredible statistics with Midtjylland, who obviously Matthew Benham, the Brentford owner, the other team he's been involved with, that they did a load of work on set plays and increased the number of goals they scored significantly. And so I just sort of think, why would you not work on set plays? It just sort of seems a thing where and England at the World Cup in 2018, they obviously spent a lot of time working on set plays. And that became a huge factor in England getting to the semi-final. So Chelsea obviously do work on set plays and they're reaping the benefits. And I don't know why more teams don't do it.
I feel like Patrice Evra here, but I love this game. I tell you what, WhoScored over the last 24 hours, I've heard some outrageous things. We did the spaces last night, and the first thing was that Jake compared Tony Cruz to Tom Huddleston. No, Thiago to Tom Huddleston, which I wasn't expecting. Then the second thing was Martin labelled Lionel Messi pathetic. And now today, we're talking about table football and comparing real football to table football. I mean, tune in next week to find out how Man City beat West Ham based on Sabutio. Because I tell you what,
not Sabutio. It's not Sabutio.
No. I know. I'm saying next week.
Next week. Okay,
yeah,
right. Okay.
Next
Sorry.
week. You used to love to ruin my gag, Jonathan. Honestly, greatest gag of all time ruined. I absolutely loved Sabutio as a kid. Incidentally, if anyone cares, Hudson-Odoi going a little bit under the radar. Josh, he's been an important part of what Chelsea have done this season. He's started 8 out of the last 10 games as well.
He's. I think it just all goes back to the point Jonathan made last week. Is that if you're performing well in training and you do what Thomas Tuchel wants, there's clear evidence that will be that you'll get the rewards and you'll get first team chances. I think that was a big criticism of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But yeah, this has happened to Hudson-Odoi, who's clearly extremely talented, and under, I think he broke through under Conte. He had a bit of a spell under Sarri, but never really sustained. He obviously had that big injury, and then was in and out under Lampard. But now, yeah, he's become a pretty important player for Thomas Tuchel. I'm such a big fan of him, and I was quite excited to see him when he was linked to Bayern and Dortmund, to see how that would go for him. But Chelsea were pretty adamant that he wouldn't leave, even though he wasn't playing it. And I guess this is why I actually think he's got the same ceiling as Jadon Sancho. Obviously, just coming a couple of years later than Sancho. But yeah, I'm sure that Gareth Southgate will have his eye on him now. There's been a lot of talk about whether we should have given him a competitive game just so he couldn't be swayed elsewhere. But he wasn't playing at that time, but now he is. And he's actually, across the last 3 Premier League seasons, he's actually averaging a clear-cut goal-scoring opportunity. So he's creating one more as often as Trent Alexander-Arnold and Bruno Fernandes, and more frequently than the likes of Mo Salah, Son and Jack Grealish. So he just needs that run of games now, which he's getting. And then I think we'll really find out what he's made of.
He can also play right wing back, so Gareth Southgate's eyes will be lighting up there, because as we know, you can never have too many.
Did he not play in that away game in Montenegro, in that qualifier? Has he not really played competitively for England?
I don't think so, because I think there's talk, isn't there, about I think it's Ghana are interested in trying to take him.
Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Sorry.
I haven't got a clue. I can't get involved. I don't know either way. Carrick's first game then. Jonathan, did you watch Manchester United the other night?
I did.
Champions League. What did you think? I mean, I thought actually it was okay.
Yeah, it was okay, and I think he did the right thing, which was to keep them defensively solid. I don't think you'd expect miracles in the first game. I don't think you'd expect major changes. But just the fact that the fullback sat much deeper early on, which meant Danjuma didn't have the influence over the game he did in the meeting at Old Trafford, that was just a basic thing you could do to sort of nullify the Villarreal threat. United, I think, our first hour, 65 minutes, still weren't great. That De Gea made a couple of very good saves. And this is... it's not that they're playing a really good side. They're playing the team who are 13th, I think, or 12th in La Liga. And then you have to give him credit for the substitutions he made, which flipped the game, and United were much, much better in that last 20, 25 minutes. So, yeah, he shut Villarreal down. They got away with it slightly, and then the last quarter of the game, they're much a better side, and in the end probably did deserve the win. So he stopped the rot at the very least. I wouldn't be giving them a job on the back of that game, but equally, I think that realistically was pretty much as good as you could have expected. So we'll see if he can. Shutting down the 13th best team in Spain is one thing. Can you shut down the best team in Europe? It's a bit harder. And he's having to do it without Varane and without Maguire and without Pogba and without Greenwood, which obviously makes it even more difficult.
No Maguire, Chelsea set pieces. Could be a worry for Manchester United. We've got a combined 11. So, Jonathan, you'll have done one as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was really hard.
How many are in yours? Manchester.
15.
Well, no, there's 11. How many Manchester United players?
No, there's 15 Chelsea players and no Manchester United players. I found it really hard to pick an 11 out of the Chelsea squad.
Oh, really?
It's quite hard to work out what their starting 11, what their first choice 11 would be.
Go on then. Let's see.
Well, Mendy, Thiago Silva flanked by Christensen and Rudiger, James, and I presume we're going with only fit players, so Alonso at left back. Jorginho, and I know there's doubts over Kante, and Kovacic is obviously out, so Jorginho +1, could be Loftus-Cheek, could be Kante, but certainly not Fred or McTominay or Matic. And then is Mason Mount going to be back after all this tooth stuff? I'm not sure.
He came on the other night, so he should.
So Mount and probably Havertz behind Lukaku. Weirdly, the one United player who I would be tempted to put in there is if I played Havertz as the centre forward and then maybe dropping Jadon Sancho. I guess maybe Bruno Fernandes. Maybe that's a bit unfair. Maybe I'm being over-influenced by his slight downturn in form of last month, but he was very good having come on against Villarreal. But fundamentally, yeah, it's a Chelsea 11.
I mean, Chelsea got so many players. I really feel like you're missing someone blatant from Chelsea's team.
Well, Timo Werner, I haven't found a space for.
Yeah,
Chalobah, who's obviously been really good recently. Azpilicueta.
It's the positions behind the striker, isn't it? There is literally different personnel every week. I mean,
Pulisic.
Barkley's played there and looked semi-decent. I mean, you wouldn't have him in the team, but unbelievable options Chelsea have got. The squad is so strong. What's the WhoScored statistical 11 then, Josh?
So ours is all competitions and excluding injured players. So it's Edouard Mendy in goal, which I guess is fairly obvious. And then in defence, we've got Thiago Silva and Rudiger. And I guess that third spot, as Jonathan said, is quite up for grabs. We've actually got Trevor Chalobah, which heavily influenced by the amount of goals he scored this season. And then in midfield, so it's a 3-4-3, I should say. We've got Reece James, who could have the freedom of Manchester United's left area of their defence with no Shaw and no Maguire. Then we've got Jorginho and Ruben Loftus-Cheek as the central midfield partnership with Kante injured. I think this is Kante's 8th separate injury of this in this calendar year alone, which is I guess a concern going forward for them. And it would have been Ben Chilwell, but we've got Marcus Alonso, which is quite a nice backup to have for Chelsea when you consider how many goals their defence scores. And Marcus Alonso has probably been the best goal scorer and fullback in the Premier League over the last 5 or so years. And then this is probably where it might get a little bit controversial. The two behind our lone striker, we've got Callum Hudson-Odoi and Bruno Fernandes. Fernandes is helped by his Champions League rating. He's assisted in all 5 of his games in that competition. And then because Lukaku has been out for so long and he was quite poor before then, we've actually got Cristiano Ronaldo up front. And again, he's helped by the fact that he scored in every Champions League game as well this season.
Jonathan loves it when Ronaldo makes it into the team, don't you, Jonathan?
I'm always nervous to mention it.
Well, you know my feelings.
I do. Feel free to say them again for people who might be new to the podcast, Jonathan. Let's not.
He scores loads of goals, but
he
just unbalances the side. He destroyed Juventus and he's destroyed Manchester United despite all his goals. And his goals are part of his cunning. That's what allows the toxicity to spread, because all people see, goals, late goals, winner. Ooh.
Nice. I mean, you don't want to see goals in football. Absolutely not. That is not what
goals are such a misleading statistic.
Poor Ronaldo. I don't think he watches. I can't imagine him watching any podcast at all, let alone ours. But yeah, poor Ronaldo.
Well, if he is, book up, sunshine.
Have you ever done an article on him and you absolutely slated him like you do on the podcast? Because you might say that. I
mean, have you read any of my oeuvre? I think I've done 8 pieces this season about Ronaldo.
I don't know what oeuvre is. What's oeuvre?
It's a French word. I don't know what it means. No, my body of work.
Okay,
which makes me sound incredibly pretentious. I mean, I guess oeuvre did as well.
I'll give you a chance to advertise your books for Christmas, Jonathan. I've seen you've been doing that on Twitter.
Yeah, I have. I mean, all my books I think will make excellent Christmas presents, but Inverting the Pyramid is the one I make most money off. So if you could buy that'd be great. But if you want to look at the tragic story of Hungarian football between the wars, a load of players who and coaches who were incredibly influential, who sort of been forgotten about now because they were killed in the Second World War, either in conflict or in concentration camps. The names said long ago is my most recent book. Angels of Dirty Faces, My History of Argentinian Football. There's something for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that story's still not as tragic as when I did the nice gesture of buying you a program and you basically that's still one of the most tragic things that's ever been seen. We'll say as well, whenever I tweet you, Jonathan, you never reply. I always think, I have a bit of banter with Jonathan. We're good friends now. Oh no, he just ignores me. It makes me look silly in front of my peers.
I genuinely never notice you tweeting me. I get lots of tweets from people.
We all do, Jonathan, but if I got a tweet from you, I would reply. Let's move on now to the Bet Builder. Josh, give us the Bet Builder for this week.
So should we do our predictions first for this game, and then I'll move on?
You're the boss, Josh. Okay, fine. You're the host now, Josh. You want to tell us what to do?
I was just thinking for Jonathan's sake, for he's got to get off, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. I've got
2-0. 2-0 Chelsea.
Bloody hell, I've gone 2-0 Chelsea as well.
We've gone for 3-0. United have conceded as many goals in the Champions League this season as Chelsea have in all competitions. So don't think they're going to have any joy here.
I mean, it doesn't matter what order we do because Jonathan's still got to be on the screen when we do the Bet Builder. So it makes no difference at all. But give us the Bet Builder, please, Josh.
Okay, I'll quickly run through it. So we've got it's another 4-parter. We've got Chelsea to score 2+ goals. Chelsea have scored 14 in their last 4 league matches and have scored at least twice in 8 of their last 12 in the league. Obviously, United have massive defensive issues in general and also coming into this game. The next part is we've got Lukaku to score. He scored his last 3 goals have come for Chelsea have come at Stamford Bridge, and he obviously will have a bit of a point to prove against his former club. We've got Ronaldo to be carded. He's actually been carded more times against Chelsea than he's scored goals. He's been booked 5 times against them in his career, which is the joint most against any English team. And we've already seen a number of times this season the petulant side of him. So it wouldn't be surprised if United are frustrated in this game and Ronaldo just lashes out at Azpilicueta like Ibrahimovic did recently. And then the last part is Fred to be carded. He's been booked in 4 of his last 5 appearances against Chelsea, and that's been boosted from 32-1 to 40-1, which is again a best price.
Excellent. Good prices this week. Thank you very much to our sponsors, BetVictor. That does us for this week's show. I'm off to compose a tweet that's going to be good enough for Jonathan to reply for. And as Josh is now the host, I think it's only fair that he sees us out. Do you want to see us out, Josh?
Yeah, I'll go for it. A bit of pressure. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Remember to subscribe and leave all your comments below. And good luck, Jonathan, for your day session.
Thank you, and stay safe.